And welcome, everyone. This is Tech Show Today, live from high atop the Chicago Hilton at ABA Tech Show 2017. I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm Senior Counsel for Digital Payments and Labs at MasterCard. I'm the chair of the ABA's Legal Technology Resource Center, and I've been involved in Tech Show for many years. We're excited to do this show, and we're especially excited to have the current chair of Tech Show on our panel. But we have a great panel for everybody today, and I think we're going to talk about some really interesting topics that may surprise people and get you to think in different ways. So you start, Kimberly, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Sanchez. I'm the Executive Director of Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida. We're the largest legal aid in Florida. So I'm excited to be here and see all of the new innovations that are going on in technology.
Because your lawyers need them more than, if not,
yes,
I mean, just more than anybody. I think lawyers that are in legal aid services could really use a lot of help with technology, especially now that technology, in my opinion, is becoming so affordable. So yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah,
thanks for being a representative of the legal aid and coming to Tech Show, because we don't get a lot of representation, and I think it's that they don't realize how helpful this show can be for any lawyer, regardless of your demographic or where you practice. And you are?
First of all, I disagree with everything you just said. I'm John Stewart. I'm a partner at Rossway Swan in Vero Beach, Florida, which would make you wonder what I'm doing here. I've been on the Florida Bar Board of Governors this is my 11th year. I chair our technology committee, and my second year speaking at Tech Show on a variety of issues. So looking forward to another fun year.
Yeah, John's a very special and cool lawyer. He was a Luddite 3 years ago, and he's a completely different man. Technology has
longer than 3 years.
Yeah, you're right. It was probably longer than that. So,
but yes, it was true.
And I'm Adriana Linares. I'm very excited to be the chair of this year's ABA Tech Show, and excited to have two of my very best friends here and one of my oldest and dearest friends. I mean, Dennis, you and I go back to my first Tech Show, which would have been, I was trying to think, it must have been in 2006, maybe?
No, I don't know exactly when it was. I always say there's two types of speakers at Tech Show. Those who can tell you exactly when they first spoke and first attended Tech Show and what they were wearing, and those like me who go like, I don't know, it's been a while.
I think I had a trio at the time. We tell time by the technology we were using. So we had trios at the time, maybe a flip phone. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah, one of the first times I was at Tech Show, the speakers got the chance to use the new BlackBerries, like the first time people used BlackBerries. And so the funny thing was that we realized the cool use of it was we could email page people like our other speaker friends when they're on stage. And so you see these people going like, why is this thing vibrating? And then they would laugh because you were making jokes with each other.
And one of the funny Tech Show memories that I have was Kevin O'Keefe had the first MacBook Air I had ever seen with my own eyes. So what was that, 5 or 6 years ago? So we do really laughably tell time with Tech Show by the technology we were either showcasing or seeing. And that makes me think of something very cool, that this year's Tech Show giveaways that we give away at the concierge booth are virtual reality glasses. And they're awesome. I mean, they're not $1,000 virtual reality glasses, but they're pretty fun. And
yeah, we tried them out.
We tried
them out. we were on a roller coaster.
And I think that's one of those things that is so amazing about what's happening with technology. Is there a use for it in legal? I don't know. I'm sure there will be. But anyway, thanks for having us, Dennis. Thanks for having us on Tech Show today.
I know,
all
exciting.
Right. So the big question for you guys to start out is, what gets you out of Florida to come to Tech Show all the time?
The weather?
The weather would be the last.
We love the 19-degree weather outside. So
I'm not even going to leave the hotel.
We seriously are 3 Floridians.
Yes.
We showed up without coats, basically. John might have his flip-flops on for all I know. There's no other show like Tech Show. And John, this is your second year. Kim, this is your third year. Second at least coming. And I just know how important it is to be a part of this. And there's why wouldn't we come here? Why wouldn't I want to be chair of such a great event with so many great speakers and vendors and opportunities for lawyers to really learn how to make their practices better using technology?
Yeah, I know. And like you were saying, it's unfortunate that the nonprofit sector hasn't quite gotten themselves here, because we are, in our sector, we don't have problems finding clients.
Right.
We're constantly trying
plenty
to
of those.
sort of stop that bleeding that's occurring. And technology is one of those things that, I mean, clearly it's just so obvious. That is one of those things that really helps us with the volume.
So-
And being here and seeing all of the new startups and the energy around it, all of the tools that we can use, it's incredible.
And and Kim, much to your credit, not only are you here, your IT director is also here.
Yes.
And you sent in you staffed the hackathon with 2 attorneys from your legal aid organization.
Yes.
So I think it's interesting that you see that value in the benefit. And as a younger executive director, I think of, what would seem like an older sector, I guess. I don't know. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Without
no, you
insulting
are.
anybody.
No, you are. No, you are.
Do you think that your desire to be a part of this and include your staff is because you're a younger, more progressive director of a legal aid?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And nothing against the sector, but even like the nonprofit sector is sort of falls behind the curve, but like the legal sector sort of has to catch up. And so you add legal and nonprofit, and we're constantly sort of fighting
Yeah. No, I know.
progression.
And John is another great representative of a sector, and that is he's a bar leadership. And Florida, which has, and I'll let you go ahead and talk about this, has traditionally been known as like this old stodgy bar association that didn't want to be interested in technology, has made a huge change. Tell us about that.
Well, we have. I think the biggest change, although we're continuing to make changes, the biggest change was the Florida Supreme Court approving our change to our continuing legal education requirements, requiring 3 mandatory technology CLEs, which is definitely new to the country and innovative. And I think part of it springs from participation here, from bar leadership's participation here. A lot of bar leadership is here, not just myself and others involved in the bar. There's a lot of bar leadership that's here. And what happens, I think, valuable to Tech Show and coming, which I've learned now in the last 2 years, is for those of us who are working in these areas, whether we're getting paid or we're doing it volunteer for the bars, is you get to talk to other people. And that information, that dialogue is just so valuable that you just don't get in your own silos and your own settings.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big buzzwords this year is pivot in this sense. And so I think of what Florida did over the last couple of years is this gigantic pivot, because Florida was always my example of, like, you don't want to be a state like Florida.
Everybody's
like, they're
example
like,
is Florida.
They're like anti-technology, and they've completely...
What are they doing down there?
They completely changed the approach, and it'll be interesting to see whether their states really start to pick that up. But the change has just been so great and so fast, and not nearly the resistance that I expected. I don't know. Did you see a lot of resistance, or how did that work?
No, there was virtually none. I thought there would be a lot because we hadn't changed the CLE requirements since inception. They had never been added to in terms of the number of hours, and we added the number of hours. I thought that alone would be a change. But I think the biggest, what we found out, and people identify with it, is 3 hours is not the solution, but it's enough to let you know what you don't know. And now that people are learning what they don't know, and they see how valuable it is to their practice, that's the incentivizer for doing it. And I think it's paid off already.
And I think it's you don't see technology today as being so separate. You see your kids, everybody with phones, and you know that there's a possibility of doing all these things. It's not like, there's just a few people doing that. Because when I first came to Tech Show, it'd be like, oh my God, there are other people like me out here in the world, and I get to
No,
chase
Dennis, hold on. There are actually no other people like you. But
And so now I think you see a lot more people say, I know I need to learn something. And so I think in the legal services area, which I actually think is one of the most innovative areas, because I think you have the most constraints, budget and otherwise, and we can jump into that. But I think that some of the hackathon things are all geared toward what can become legal services apps. Some of the really interesting things I've seen happen in legal services out of Chicago have been usability on websites, getting simple language, dealing with different languages that people speak. And so it's kind of like the constraints of legal services with the right people create some really interesting
Oh,
opportunities.
yes, and thank you, Dennis. Like, there's so much innovation that occurs within legal services and technology because, like I said, we just can't handle it. We don't have the capacity. The problem, I think, is after a while, we're sort of innovating and innovating and innovating, and keeping it sustainable is something that, like, we need to do by incorporating all of the legal and all of the nonprofit together, which is why Tech Show is awesome, because you showcase all of the vendors. You have all of these very incredible and consultants and speakers that you get to just interface with and actually have a conversation about why legal services, right?
And solve
about some of
problems,
these-
right? And get
solve
ideas.
so many
And
problems.
I say that all the time. I go, you come to this conference, you got 2.5 days of free consulting all day.
Right.
And, you can talk to
Right.
groups and people that you go, I'm in legal aid, I've got this thing. And by the way, do you have a nonprofit pricing? And, just, so it is. It's awesome.
Yeah, because you could conceivably have somebody who would say, hey, this would be attractive to us to do like a pilot. We have something we'd like to pilot, and we can, do well by doing good, or however you want to say it. But they would say, hey, if we roll this out, legal services, it's like a big enough group, and
Oh,
we can
it's
see, we can
huge
see
group.
something as a pilot, and we can help you guys, and also kind of fine tune our product or get the word about our product.
Right.
So I think you can create some opportunities like that.
Yeah. I mean, I came back this year because last year I met so many people that I would have never met before and developed relationships with, and like started creating and having these conversations like outside of your bubble, which is what Adriana consistently says about, being at Tech Show, which is, hey, the person next to you is an expert. It's not just the person that's up there speaking. Everybody's an expert. Shake hands and get to know each other.
And I think it's an interesting time for you, Kimberly, considering the news that came out today.
Just this morning, the
And so
president
let's-
released his
Yeah,
budget.
so let's talk about the new President
Sure.
Trump's budget and how that's going to affect Kim's world.
So the president just released his budget, and it totally defunds entirely Legal Services Corporation.
Now, are you sure, like, were you looking on your iPhone? Maybe your font was really small. Maybe there was something missing, like to entirely defund.
So-
This sounds crazy.
I know, and I wish that it was an eyesight issue. Like, John, can I borrow your glasses?
They're clean now.
No, I mean, because then I had like follow-up calls from like board members and staff and other people in the community, and like lots and lots of emails. And it's just, it is a blueprint. It's, the president's budget. It goes to Congress, so there's definitely some fight in that arena that we will see. But the administration has a very different idea of what should and shouldn't be funded, and Legal Services Corporation is just not one of those things. And so it's got to go through Congress, and it's got to go through this. But that would be half of my budget, and there are 150 grantees throughout the nation from Legal Services Corporation, where the majority of our budget is probably those monies that are from Congress. And the less, obviously, again, the less people that I have to help, the amount of persons that need help. Very difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Well, that deals with the the buzz topic in Florida, at least, and within the bar associations, is access to justice, and it's probably not limited to Florida. And it directly affects that. And of course, the next level is how do you help the people who legal aid can't help? And that's some things that we've been looking at, trying to find some innovative ways with the incubator project that we've been trying to put together in Florida, but it's going to create a much bigger problem, and the problem is already large
Pretty
enough.
darn big.
That's right.
It's kind of a big problem now.
It is. It's really an interesting problem, because the thought is that technology will really help solve the access problem by allowing lawyers to reach consumers in a more competitive way in terms of price points, that they can deliver products and still make money. But at least so far, and it's kind of early, I guess, but a lot of the surveying is not bearing that out. I mean, lawyers are starting to adapt technology, but the price points aren't reflecting it. So the access is not narrowing. The gap is not narrowing. Now, it's early, so that could change. But if it doesn't change, then we have to look for another solution.
Right, and I think that, yeah, so when I look at Tech Show, it seems like early on you're interested in like what the vendors were bringing. Like, what's the new product? And remember that days when you're like, oh, I wonder what the new hardware will be. Like, now it's irrelevant. You know, it seems like,
It's so funny.
and now it's like, okay, here's some software tools, and then the cloud was new. And
Right, and now we don't even ask, are you cloud-based? Because
you sort of
you just are.
You just sort of assume it.
Yeah, it is so funny.
And so it seems like there's more, especially the last couple of years, more of a ground-up sense. So you're saying, okay, so the tools are there, and it's kind of like, how can you see to put them together in different ways? But it's more like the energy is coming from people who are here saying, here's what we're trying to do, and we have some ideas,
Right.
you know, and there's never...
this has to be possible today.
Like,
That's what they say.
I can't
Right.
believe that you can't do this at this point. And so, like, with the hackathons and things like that, people are saying, okay, how can we do something that's actually, you know, alternative delivery of legal services with technology that deals with staffing, that deals with volume, that deals with, you know, some of the constraints that people have. And so I think that's, you know, this kind of ground-up innovation that's really starting to happen. I expect to see more of in the coming years.
Yeah, and I think tech show is like one of the big catalysts for that. And I think the key word there is alternative, right? Because we are asking lawyers and the profession and even outsiders to expect and try and attempt to do something different than they've always done it. And that just takes time. And that's why tech show, bringing all this together and having, you know, a progressive sort of platform has really like inspired people, I think.
You know, and John here is a great example of a lawyer that gets inspired by technology. His new favorite thing, I think, is the blockchain. Did we read about the blockchain?
I read about it, but please
Okay.
don't make me try and explain
No,
it.
I'm not going to.
It's so complicated.
But here's the funny thing. You know, 3 years ago,
I'm speaking with Professor
Oliver Goodenough. Oh my gosh.
but not on
love
blockchain. He's speaking on blockchain, but I'm speaking with him, so I may ask him some questions if he can dumb it down for me.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting is that John texted me the other day, and he's like, I think this blockchain thing might actually be really interesting for legal. I'm going to learn about it. And that's what I love seeing in lawyers like John going, you know, 3 years ago I would have said, hey, listen, you better start reading up on that blockchain. and he would have said, and I think he actually did, what? That's totally irrelevant. How could that ever matter to legal? But all these things are affecting not just legal. I mean, you know, every little innovation that is worth a damn is going to start making changes. And I think that's awesome. You've gotten into AI. You really love how the potential of AI can help lawyers. Do you want to look? And Dennis is super into AI.
I love AI too.
Who doesn't love AI?
Yeah.
He's so cute. I wish he was single.
I know. He's not.
No, he's married happily.
Well, I think part of the attitude that I see is different. So something like blockchain. So you would see people look at it and they go, oh, there's this notion of smart contracting, sort of like the second generation of blockchain. And then lawyers would tend to look at it and say, oh, here are all the problems, or, oh, the smart contracting thing
It's
is
so
really,
dumb.
it's like so simple, it won't replace what we will do. And then there are other people now more often say, well, but what would it do, and what can it do, and can it do some low-level things that allow lawyers to do higher-level work, the creative work that really turns us on,
Yeah.
Versus saying, oh, I got to move volume. You know, which is like in your world, you go on, you have lawyers who are really, really good, but they have staggering volumes.
Right,
you know.
right. No, yeah, they're crushed by it.
I
That's why
think-
AI is awesome, because like I would like somebody to do all of a robot.
What I like about it as I read about it, and what, you know, since you all are in charge of what goes on at Tech Show and maybe what happens next year, the one thing that I've, in my opinion, has really been missing in all these conversations is, when do you start having the conversation about how these new platforms affect attorney-client relationships, you know, affect ethics, affects professionalism? I mean, these are conversations that are totally ignored that really have to happen because they're really interesting questions. And so I think that's really going to start to evolve as these technologies become more commonplace in everyday practices.
Because that's going to be the barrier, or one of the
It's-
perceived barriers.
Well, with the regulatory bodies, you know, like the bar associations, it may or may not be a barrier, but it has to be a conversation. And I
Right.
think and people need to think it through rather than just assume that everything will be fine.
Could you say, well, there's a technology fix for some of the stuff. You just encrypt things, and it's all a technology solution. And then you would say, well, there's this notion of confidentiality that's a little bit different. And then you say, but I know especially in the startups, the millennials, even some established businesses, they're like, I don't know that I care that much about confidentiality in the way lawyers think about it. Like I would, you should be able to figure out a way that you can represent me and my competitor, and
Right.
there's a way to kind of like, what?
Right.
You just put it on different servers
How hard
or
can it
lock
be?
it up. Like it's like a
just
simple
technology.
thing. It's just technology, yeah. So, but I think those conversations are really out there, and you say, we're having a conversation now about this, and 6 months from now, it's a completely different conversation, and 6 months from then, it's a completely different conversation, and I don't know how many of us thought that you'd be practicing law off a smartphone, but that's basically where we're at now.
Well,
Yeah.
and what I like about what you're saying, John, is let's start having this conversation now, because, and I think you and I talk about this a lot, is the problem with getting lawyers at this point to have even paid attention to technology was they were always saying, oh, that's in 7 years, I'll be retired by the time this affects my practice, it'll be in 5 years, and we just kept talking about the future of technology, the future, and now all of a sudden, like, it literally came along and it sucker punched everybody super fast, faster than anybody knew. So I think thinking about these conversations, you're cutting off a lot of that that resistance at the pass if we start talking about it now, because a lot of these conversations can be had even before the technology is commercial. I mean, like, it's easy to, I think it's easy to start having the discussion and be prepared for it so that we don't hit that type of resistance later.
Yeah, and you need to start to layer in the conversations because, as we all see, there are regulatory bodies, there are rules that lawyers have to follow, and even if the lawyers and the bodies all agree that those rules need to change, that process is fairly glacial.
Yes.
It's
a good way to put it.
and it often requires ultimate approval by a state court body, usually a state Supreme Court, and so you have to start having the conversations as early as you can, because to get through, identifying rules that are possibly affected and may need to be changed to make sure you can implement these new platforms in a way that doesn't impair, core traditional values, you have to start doing that quickly, because, the Celia rule change, which nobody objected to, was still a 2.5 year process.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I was recently talking about Snapchat. Okay, so you would say, this is kind of an interesting Florida comment to me, is because, so Snapchat, the notion is the stuff disappears after a certain amount of time. It's like one of the features, and it's really heavily used and growing. And so you would say, well, how do you think about that as a lawyer or a regulator? And you say, because I was thinking, well, if I were in the private practice of law, I would really struggle with this, because I think my bar association would say I need to keep records of anything that could be marketing.
Right.
And this stuff is just disappearing by its nature.
On purpose, right.
And there's 600 million, users of it. And so, by the time you start to think about it and discuss it, then Snapchat has been replaced with the next new thing, and that raises some new things, and you got this whole new generation that's really comfortable with the ephemeral and not, I'll stream this, I don't need to have music, and we're going I want to have copies of all my stuff. I can't get rid of my CDs.
You mean I can't have my own copy? Someone else is going to have a copy?
Well, I went to Darth Vaughn's presentation earlier, and he started it out with what's the me generation? Is it the millennials or whatever? And he was showing pictures of Time magazine from the 60s that said we're the me generation. So the me generation is all of us, every single one of us. And the way that we communicate, and because we're all now using our smartphones and communicating through technology, he said basically you have an 8-second time span, which time span, and that's less than a goldfish. So by the way, and less than the attention span of a goldfish, and we are moving towards communicating in emojis because they're pictures, and the brain processes pictures differently than it does words, and
everybody loves emojis.
And so,
don't you get annoyed when you can't find an emoji that evokes,
so
which
annoyed.
Rarely happens because they're all actually there.
So I had this idea once that I couldn't get any buy-in on.
Dennis, I got your back. Let's do it.
No, you could do contract review with emojis only. So if somebody did something you really disagreed with, they'd be like, no.
That would be awesome.
I'm pretty sure whoever had that practice would do well.
They would do very well.
I mean,
well, and if you didn't get enough Darth and I are co-presenting tomorrow, so you can come in and see Darth.
Swoon.
Yeah, right. I mean, we can all swoon at Dorothy's. We're working on our Star Wars jokes. I try and figure out how I'm going to come into play on that because I don't see how Darth is my father, but it may come out that way.
Is your presentation emoji based?
Not yet, but we may tweak it tonight after a few beers at the after party.
So you have 3 sessions that you're doing at Tech Show. Is that right?
Correct,
So
yes.
you've got. Tell us a little bit about those.
When firms merge with Mary Vandenack today.
I love that topic. So I think that your firm just went through that.
Correct.
Mary Vandenack, who's an active member of LP, she taught the yoga class today. She's a great lawyer out of Omaha. I've had her on my podcast on the Legal Talk Network.
Excellent yoga
She's so
instructor.
cool. She is just, gosh, she's such a special lady. She has merged and melted her firm a couple of times. So I think that's I think this might be the first time we've had that topic at Tech Show, is helping lawyers figure out how to merge firms regardless of the size. And a lot of that today comes down to technology. I mean, John, you just went through this.
Right. Well,
So-
and it was fun. I co-presented with Mary last year, and we learned she's the brains of the operation, and I, bring it down to a practical level. So we'll be experiencing that again today at 4.
We should have called that session Beauty and the Beast.
Right, we should have, right.
The brains beauty, and then no, I'm just kidding. And then your other 2 sessions, you got the one with Darth on.
One with Darth on technology is easy, isn't hard.
Isn't hard. It's not.
Right. And then with Professor Goodenough.
Oliver Goodenough. Do you guys know
Right.
him?
No.
So Professor Goodenough is a professor at the University of Vermont School
Yes,
of Law, I think.
correct.
And do you know the details about the blockchain thing that he helped to do? Okay. Do you
No,
know it enough to say it? Okay, I
don't,
think I
but
can.
we talked about it a little bit.
So back to the blockchain to bring the conversation sort of full
I
circle.
think I had the 8-second experience when he was telling me about it. Because
Just think of yourself as a goldfish.
Somehow he was very heavily involved with getting the state of Vermont to, and I don't know if it's now or if it's just something they're moving toward, to actually use blockchain technology to verify court records. So when we take these odd technologies that we think are never going to affect law and legal or just day-to-day life, and then that's a perfect example. So there was a technology that was built by some guy, whatever his name is, that nobody even knows who he really
The
is.
mystery guy.
Right, the mystery guy from
Mr. Block.
Australia. Maybe he's Darth Vaughan. And it's an internet currency, right?
Well, there's Bitcoin, which is
Bitcoin.
the
Oh, sorry,
currency.
sorry.
Blockchain is
Right.
the
Blockchain
platform.
is
right?
the
Is
platform
easy
that
way to think
Bitcoin
about
is
it.
built
Yeah.
on. Yes, thank you.
Right.
And somehow that technology, someone recognized that this is an amazing way to encrypt and secure in an unbreakable format records and keep them for. So it's very interesting, and I'm really excited that we have Professor Goodenough here. We also have a bunch of other professors and faculty at Tech Show this year because we have our first ever academic track. And I walked into that room, so there's a whole track with faculty and staff. They wanted to come to Tech Show. They approached us last year and said, hey, why don't you do something for the academy? I said, what do you mean? What do you mean the academy? You guys don't teach anything. No practice management in most of your law schools. They said, but we want to. This is a perfect place to learn. So there's a bunch of them here, several of them, innovative and progressive, using this as an opportunity to sort of use Tech Show like a workshop. If we were going to teach practice management and technology in a law school curriculum, and I know there are schools that are doing that. Don't be insulted if I'm not making a blanket statement. There are schools that are doing it and doing it well, but there are many schools that are trying to figure out how to do this. And the academic track is really cool. It was a packed room in there when I was up there earlier,
I think
so I'm
that's
excited.
awesome.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
I think you should also talk about Startup Alley because
Oh, yeah.
that's sort of like one of my favorites. Because you get to see like all of the new, interesting, innovative technology like that people are just coming up with and have the ability to showcase.
I'm glad you mentioned it. Did you get to watch any of that last night?
I didn't get to watch any, but I talked to a number of people on Startup Alley who I've either known for a little while or just met. So
And they're
it's-
also excited.
Oh, yeah.
So to let everyone else know, Tech Show has traditionally 100, 110, 20 vendors that come and exhibit in our expo hall. And it's amazing. It's kind of overwhelming. It's a lot of vendors. And it's expensive for startups and small companies. So this year we used Bob Ambrogi and Above the Law helped us do a contest over the internet where these new startups, and we had some rules, you could never have exhibited at Tech Show. You have to had been in business for this long. We had some very simple rules, and we're going to have a contest. 12 of you are going to be invited to come and attend Tech Show in what we call Startup Alley at a very reasonable amount of money. We gave them small booths, and it looks so cool. So there's 12 of those, 12 companies. I think we had like 20 apply. 12 got voted in by the internet, legal professionals and everyone interested in this business. They're all here, and they are so cool. And all their technologies are different. There's trust accounting, there's match services, there's contract review. And so then last night we had a startup pitch that Evolve Law and Bob Ambrogi helped us do. And they sort of did like a March Madness bracket where the 12 companies went head to head. And the audience voted through our conference app on who the winner was, which was Clary Legal. No, Ping. Yeah. Ping won, and it was just a lot of energy and cool. And the reason that was important to me to bring it to Tech Show, so I really want attendees and lawyers to see, to get it. This innovation thing that you think is going to go away before you, by the time you retire, or it's not going to be your problem, it is not. It is just busy out there, and people are developing tools for professionals, for legal professionals, and it's pretty cool.
Well, obviously, the other thing about that that's kind of interesting is that those of us the lawyers really interested in technology in the past would flip out of the legal practice and become consultants and that sort of thing. Now I think you see that move of the lawyers that really interested in technology are doing startup companies.
I know.
And they're coming up with apps and they're doing really interesting things, but they say we can turn this into a business. And partially it's because they see, what we sort of took as business as usual in the legal profession, they see as a problem that needs to be routed around. And so they're like, why not do this? And what we know how to do in this sort of new generation is to say, we're entrepreneurs. We just start something. If something needs to be done, we'll just start it.
And they do not move at a glacial pace.
No, exactly. It's just the exact opposite of a glacial pace.
Well, I'm getting the signal from our producers, but of course, we were talking at the beginning of how we didn't know whether we would fill enough time, and we could keep going all afternoon. So I want to thank everybody. This is one of Adriana's dreams come true to do Tech Show today. We've talked about it for many years. And it's very fun, one of the great innovations she's brought to Tech Show. And I'm so thrilled that, Adriana, you get your Tech Show this year, and the buzz downstairs is great. So
I know, there's a lot of good energy.
Very exciting.
It's a great conference. And this is great. We want to thank Legal Talk Network for going through all the trouble to do this for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
guys.
you.
Awesome, guys.
Fun.
It was a lot of fun.